Did you know that on average, almost 1/3 of all B1, B2 visa applications are refused? And in some countries, that refusal rate can be as high as almost 75 or 80%. Why are there so many visa refusals for B1s and B2s for people to travel and visit the US? Could it be due to just simple mistakes that you don't even know that you're making? In today's video, I, a former consular officer, will try to reveal some of the truth behind why US visas are often denied and give you some exclusive insights in how you can avoid these pitfalls and be successful in creating your travel plans. Look, visa denials are not just a setback. Sometimes they can feel like the end of a dream, or at the very least, they put a huge wrench in your plans, whether you want to go on holiday, you want to visit friends or family, want to just see some of the world, or you need to conduct business, right? And beyond the emotional impact, there can also come steep financial costs if you're not able to get the visa you need in order to travel. We've seen all kinds of stories and spoken with a lot of people who have been in this very situation. Students who aren't able to return or start their studies, people who were planning to travel for huge family events like weddings or funerals and unable to go. And often this can be down to a single misstep, just not understanding the process and how they can prepare themselves. There are a variety of reasons why these things can happen. And if you're somebody who's been refused, here are a few things that we encourage you to think about. First of all, start with the piece of paper that was given to you when you had your visa interview. It will give you some basic information saying that you were not found qualified for a visa, and it usually includes some kind of number like 214B or 221G. There are others, but 214B and 221G are the most common forms of refusals. 214B being by far the one that most people receive. The good news is that both of these types of refusals can and often are overcome. And what that means is that in another interview later, the person receives the visa. So what we encourage you to do is think a little bit about how the interview went and be as objective as you can. We understand that that can be challenging, right? Especially if you're really disappointed or frustrated by what happened in the process. But consider the questions you were asked by the visa officer, and importantly, how you answered. And see if you experience one of the most common pitfalls that we as visa officers often see. The first and probably the most common is letting nerves get the best of you. It happens to many applicants. Hey, I have traveled all over the world and I still get a little nervous when I go to a visa appointment, right? And it can get in the way of giving the officer the information that they need to make a good determination on your application. And sometimes it can even come across as being a little deceptive or untruthful about your purpose of travel or your plans for it. And if the officer has any concerns or doubts, they're typically going to refuse the visa. Now, we also know that often it can be people following bad advice. There is a ton of information out there, both people you may know, friends, family, acquaintances, friends of friends, but also a lot of information on the internet. It's important to remember that what one person's experience was if they were issued or they were refused doesn't necessarily apply to other people. Every applicant's circumstances are a little different. And so what worked for one applicant wouldn't necessarily work for you. And there is a lot of speculation out there. Remember how I talked about that letter that gives you the refusal? You'll notice that letter doesn't tell you exactly why, but it's very normal for people to speculate, especially if they've been refused and they say, oh, it was because I said so-and-so. I talked about that I have cousins who live in the United States, or it was because I wasn't able to tell them exactly what hotel I was going to stay in. And so that's speculation, right? Then people use that as advice and turn to others and say, well, don't say this, or make sure you say that, or never, ever say that. The bottom line is that, that advice is only so useful unless your circumstances are exactly like that person's. And this then feeds into the final most common reason why people are refused is being unprepared. Not being able to speak easily about your purpose of travel or your travel plans. It doesn't mean that you have to provide confirmation numbers for your hotel reservations, but being able to talk about where you plan to go, why you want to go there, how long, how you're going to do it, right? Traveling to the United States for a lot of people it's a big trip. It can be very expensive. For some people, they may have been planning this for a long time. So it's reasonable for officers to expect that you'll be able to talk about your plans and why you want to go and how you're going to go about doing it. When you're not prepared, and especially if you're also nervous, then that can often lead to inconsistent information. Remember, when you applied for your visa, you filled out an application form called the S-160. The officer is going to have looked at that before you ever walk up to their window. And the questions that they ask you, they're going to compare your answers to what you listed on your application form. And if they see things that are inconsistent, right, maybe dates or names of other people who are traveling or any information like that, it may make them question whether you're really going to do what you say you're going to do, or at least that you're sure about what you're going to do. And keep in mind too that officers keep notes on everything. If you've applied before, if members of your family that you're traveling with have applied before, they can take a look at that information. Officers put notes on every interview. And then if you've previously traveled to the United States, there's going to be information from when you landed in the United States. The officer that you saw there, they're going to put notes in the system as well. And so the person who is interviewing you has access to all of this. So it's really important to look over your application form, be sure that you're filling it completely and accurately. In fact, review it before you go for your interview, just to refresh yourself about what you put. Right? So there can be lots of things that can lead to this, but what's really important to understand is that most visa officers, including me, will tell you that a lot of denials come from just misunderstandings. In many countries, the officers only have a few minutes with their applicants, and officers don't like that, right? We want more information, but we don't always have that luxury. And so they're trying to make a determination. And if they're not able to get information from you that they feel is reasonable, makes sense for you, and is consistent with the things that you've already told them, then oftentimes they're going to refuse you. Now, I've even heard of former colleagues of mine who have refused people because there was a single, incorrect or inconsistent date listed on the document versus what they told them at the window, or other types of things that were just not the same. And it either gave the sense that the applicant was unprepared, or they just didn't know, or maybe in the worst case scenario, that maybe they weren't being truthful about their plans, right? Here's the important thing to remember though, right? Details matter. It's important to understand what officers are looking for. That's why we do videos like this. And you can check it out, lots of them on our YouTube channel, that will talk about various things, sometimes very general like this, other times specific for particular countries, or for particular types of applications like student visas and things like that. There are great ways to prepare. And that's the most important thing. If you are considering applying again, and we hope that you do, taking the time to prepare effectively can make all the difference. So what do you do for that? Well, take all of that thinking that you had about how your interview went, how the questions that were asked of you and how you answered them. And then think about how you can frame that information and be more prepared. If you are somebody whose nerves got the best of you during your interview, that's okay. You have time to practice. Practice. Have somebody ask you questions like a visa officer and practice giving your answers so that you feel comfortable, and that will help you feel more confident at the window. And when you are confident, we all tend to stand up a little straighter, we smile a little more, we look the person in the eye, right? And that carries a lot of weight at your interview. Another thing to think about is, I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of advice out there. One of the reasons that we are here is because everybody who I work with at UDESY, we're all former visa officers. We've actually done thousands of these interviews, and we like to take that information and help people prepare. So we do things like this YouTube video, but we also do personal consultations, and you can take a look at that. If you want more tips on navigating the US visa process, check out our videos. We have one on mastering visa interviews, on preparing for particular types of interviews, and you can link to them here, right? And consider, you can reach out to us and schedule a consultation if if you are thinking about applying for a second or subsequent time, or even if you've never applied and you're just trying to be as prepared as possible. Refusals can be frustrating, they can be disappointing, and for some people, they can really be life altering. But in many, if not most cases, with the right preparation, you too can be successful in your next interview. We're here to help you if we can, and we would love to hear from you. So please go down in the comments section and tell us. Ask your questions, tell us about your own experiences, and if this is helpful to you, we always want to improve what we're doing for you. So good luck in your future interviews, your future travels, and we hope to see you traveling to the U.S. sometime soon.